Okay, we are good to go for the no nonsense nutrition workshop on the middle of a work day. So I get that this might have been challenging to carve into your calendar. So appreciate that we have already 30 people in the queue here jumping in. So with that said, just type quickly in the chat kind of your number one goal for this and where you're tuning in from. If Winnipeg, I would suggest going a step deeper and saying which area of the city you're in. So I know most of us are in my radius. So number one goal or question you have would be helpful. New meals. Jason St. Adolphe. All right. Atlanta and Westwood represent my old stomping grounds. Like it. And we'll certainly have some time for questions. And if you stick around, we got those two bonus giveaways, the high protein breakfast pack and the meal prep made easy guide. How to include more protein, Bev. New meal ideas. Okay, well, we'll kind of get a little bit into that, but that'll be more so for the giveaways at the end. Okay. Hopefully we can address a lot of this stuff. Good. Time-saving prep. Excellent. Helpful. Good. So we'll hop right into it here. Just confirming you guys can see my screen. No nonsense, no stress, whatever you want to call it. Nutrition, building a meal plan you'll actually stick to. Because one of the questions we get most is, oh, I just need a meal plan. But honestly, that's setting you up for failure, and we'll get into why that is in a second here. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat. A couple more things I want to keep in mind. Okay. Hopefully we'll address them. So here's the regular pattern people get into is Monday, they wake up motivated, they've got their meals prepped, and then it all goes. But we don't want to swear on this show. Too late. Why is that? Well, real life hits hard, and your motivation that was at its peak on Monday, because you're guilty from the weekend, starts to slowly drain with each Tupperware meal you consume. That by the time Friday rolls around, you've got another option. Your spouse happens to have a pizza flyer that arrived strategically in the mailbox, and boom, blow it all away for 3 days because Monday will be the reset. So how do we get out of this pattern? Certainly why most things collapse. I would say the first reason, though, is you get bored of eating the same things or your plan just flat out sucks. You're trying to eat the most plain foods in the smallest quantities. So no human would last for long, apart from those that are like the extreme bodybuilder types. So if you're 1% of the 1% and you like that, you like the challenge of that, great. This training is for the 99.9% who have unexpected social events, family emergencies, travel, and stress that will throw off the best laid plans. So flexibility is kind of the buzzword that wins, but we want to do it in a way that I call it structured flexibility, because flexibility is why you're in the place you're in, most likely, because you're freestyling and you're over consuming without even realizing it. So what's the middle ground? That's today's solution, because it's not willpower, it's not discipline. The real problem is the plan. A lack of structure. Make sure you have that word in your head, because you still have to have structure to succeed. But I call it a system that bends without breaking. Fits into real life. So type 1 if you're on board for that. Type 2 if you want a disciplined, boring plan. Then we don't need to go any further. You just want chicken and broccoli. We can do that. It works in the short term. All right. Lots of ones. Like it. I like where you guys are at here. Okay. So a few things. Sustainable meal prep, because it's easier if you have a bit of a plan laid out for the week, which involves some prep, some level of prep. I wouldn't say 6 meals a day prep is necessary. And there are ways to save time and spend a little money with like meal prep companies. We can talk about that. Clients, you get a great deal through a few companies. Consistency through flexibility. That'll be the word of the day. And then repetition over restriction, like finding your go-tos, but not feeling so restricted that you can't stick to it. Okay, so the first variable that makes everything fit together is that proprietary system I talked about in CalFit, the CAP. Calories and protein. If you get these two numbers right, everything falls into place. You can have a flexible plan that's built within that framework. And it really is the 80-20 rule or principle in action. Okay. We'll talk about what the 80-20 rule is in this case. But just to repeat myself, the big 5 habits, and that should be your foundation, is getting your cap correct, strength training to preserve muscle and bone, daily steps, because obviously that is healthy for you and supports the calorie deficit you create through nutrition without like having that compensation effect from too much exercise or extreme HIIT classes or running constantly. That oftentimes gets us in trouble, but walking we can recover from. It's a form of recovery, frankly. Hydration, without that, you can't change the situation. Drinking your 3 L's a day, and then quality sleep, because everything goes to crap when you're underslept. Get more cravings, less willpower right from the start. There's some evidence that your metabolism just runs a little slower as well. Okay, so I just wanted to throw that out there again, because this is a foundational piece. So first up, from a meal planning perspective, is the power of 2. So I have 2 go-to breakfasts for my weekdays and 2 go-to lunches that travel well, keep you full. And you can at least not necessarily look forward to these meals, but you can tolerate. You're not feeling like it's a chore and you want something else. So make sure it's things you actually somewhat enjoy on some level. I often open up the playbook on weekends when I have more time. I'm like, oh, that's when I'll make my protein pancakes or an omelet or something that requires a bit more preparation because I have the time. So have those go-to breakfasts in mind and make sure the numbers kind of fit your plan, obviously, right? For me, it's oftentimes a protein shake, super quick, efficient, and it fills me up for hours. For you, it might be something different. You might like the Greek yogurt. Be careful with granola, but there are some okay kinds, and berries or eggs and toast if that's your thing. And then on the same token, have a couple lunches that don't take a lot of time to prep. Maybe it's leftovers from the night before. Maybe it's something that you can kind of grab and go, which can work. For me, it's the 204 meal prep meals. That's when I have just something at the ready in the fridge that hits my macros. Okay. Now with this plan, you have the bulk of your calories for dinner, which is when you want them, I would assume, for most. Because now you can plan around your social life, your family schedule, and make things fit because the rest of the days is working for you, not against you. Okay. So if you're open to sharing, just type in your go-tos just to get the wheels turning for people. What works for you for breakfast? What works for lunch? If you can drop in one of each, if you're willing to share, that would be helpful. Keep moving on here, but I think I want to have a bit of a crowdsourcing for this stuff too. So the power of 2 is step 1. Step 2 is the work back method. So when the inevitable happens and you have an event, a charity dinner, someone invites you over, you build the rest of your day around that. Okay. So perfect world, you know where you're headed, you know what you're going to order. You can find the nutrition facts in an app or online, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time, right? If you're going to, I don't know, Montana's, you can log something that hopefully is still somewhat healthy because you got to build the rest of the day's calorie allotment around that and protein. So pick and choose your battles. Make sure it's something that you're able to fit in. And then the rest of the day is just simple math to get to your totals within your framework and still fitting that meal in. And always anchor with protein. We'll talk about that. But for your other meals, especially if you go to a restaurant, odds are it's going to be more calorie dense than the rest of your meals. It's pretty tough to get a really good, healthy option that's low calorie. So that's when you have mostly protein and produce for breakfast and lunch. Okay, good stuff, guys. Irene's got the cottage cheese, pumpkin seeds, and tuna. Well, we've got to get a visual of that. That's new to me. Protein shake, oatmeal. Oatmeal's coming up a lot. That's standard. Okay, good stuff. Keep them coming. So keep that in mind. The power of 2 and the work back method, 2 great strategies to help simplify and make it all work. So I wanted this page to be a bit more visual. It's a lot of text, but the 80-20 rule applies to pretty much everything in life, and it certainly applies to how to make nutrition work and still have a bit of flexibility, structured flexibility. So 80% of the time, nutrient-dense whole foods. I would bet majority of you know what is a good food and what's maybe not as good. And making sure 80% of the time you're choosing Healthy foods, but season and sauce them up accordingly. No need for it to be plain Jane, right? And then the other 20% of your calorie allotment is the fun things you enjoy. You know, pick and choose your battles. Some people opt for liquid calories, the margarita, the wine. Others prefer, you know, more of a carb-rich dessert or fries with the sidebar, you know, the burger, whatever. So this, generally speaking, works quite well to still keep your hunger at bay and still satisfy a bit of those cravings that come up. And be careful with the 20%. Everyone has their kryptonite where you can't moderate. If the bowl of chips turns into the bag of chips, then that's probably best left off your list. Okay, we're still typing in. I love it. Okay, so some examples of how those fun foods can fit the other 20%. Maybe, especially with the work back method, it could be that burger with side fries instead of salad. Frankly, the salads at most restaurants are about as calorie dense as the fries. Yes, they come with more micronutrients. That's all well and good, but I'm talking calories here. So if you can fit in the side fries and that's what you want, awesome. It might be the pancakes instead of oatmeal. I would just use sugar-free syrup with those. On your weekends, it could be, for what I'm doing lately is like an ice cream sandwich at the end of the day. It's 220 calories. I've saved for it. It satisfies, but it's not something you go back and get more and more of. You have to, I guess you could, but you unwrap it. You feel satisfied after one. It's not the tub of ice cream that lends itself to more. Or, and I'm not a big fan of alcohol for obvious reasons and kind of the cascade effect on your appetite and sleep quality, but a glass of wine with dinner, you log it, big deal, good to go, right? Any other examples of where you're fitting your fun foods? I'd love to hear that again as well, because we're always trying to, and I'll summarize the chat at the end with the document. So there's something that really fits that maybe isn't as calorie dense, or there's an alternative. Like, for example, the Halo Top ice cream versus the real thing. You save calories, you can have a pint and it's only, 400 calories, whatever the case may be. Okay, the Last Supper trap. So this is why I think most people fall into this I'll start over Monday mentality, is because they think Monday is going to mean restriction, deprivation, all my fun foods off limits. So then the Last Supper mindset kicks in Friday, runs through Sunday, and you've consumed, a week's worth of calories over 2-3 days. And then you reset Monday and you get good and you're motivated for a day or two. And then by Friday, you end up in the same trap. So we want to get you doing the 80-20. What was that Halo Top ice cream, Ed? They carry it everywhere. There's alternatives to that now too. Cool Way is another one. Enlightened. I don't know if that's very commonplace in Canada. But the whole pint, you pay a bit more, but it's, 300 and some calories. It's higher protein. Just like there's higher protein milks now that you can get. Like, they've started to bring things onto the market that are more calorie wise and still taste pretty good, or at least comparable. Okay. I think most of you know this one, but I just had a call with, I don't know if she's here, Carly, but she's having a hard time hitting her calories in her first week in the program. And she had done the math on what she was consuming prior, and it was nearly double. And the only difference to why she's struggling to eat half the amount of calories she was eating prior is the protein piece, because it fills you the heck up. I would say that's the biggest hack on a weight loss plan, is getting your protein to a sufficient amount. There is all sorts of theories that until you hit your protein sufficiently, your body craves food and it's trying to, and that's why we eat more and more junk food, because it's so devoid of protein. That's a whole nother theory for another day. For your perspective on this is to have protein with every meal and have a target. And I'll talk to you how to calculate that at the end. For my purposes, as much as 30% of the calories don't count from protein versus minimal 1 to 5% in carbs and fats. Because just think of the Brazilian barbecue, the meat sweats. It takes more effort for your body to break it down, digest it. And of course, I'm all about fat loss, not weight loss. And that means preserving muscle in conjunction with strength training, the right kind of strength training. You can mostly preserve your muscle while dropping a lot of fat. And then that's really the perfect scenario. Because I get asked about this a lot, it also supports protein and preserving, well, not preserving muscle, but managing your appetite. And fiber keeps you regular. Sometimes if you increase your protein, you reduce your calories, we can get a bit irregular in the short term. This is one way to address that. So 25 to 35 grams a day, usually the low end for women, high end for men. And you get that from a variety of things. But a short list would be obviously anything with a lot of color, vegetables, fruits, and then less so whole grains. There are even protein bars or Metamucil you can supplement your diet with, but I would say try to get it from whole foods to that target. Okay. Making sense so far? Just type a yes if we're on the right track here. If there's anything that felt missed or confusing, let me know. Jose, soluble, insoluble. No, I think that's majoring in the minors for most. The odd time we'll look a little bit more in depth on that if it's not addressing the irregularities. But for the most part, majority of people, not a huge thing. Yeah, because there was this whole movement where net carbs was the only thing that counted, and products were kind of marketing that, and it's, it turns out it wasn't actually true, unfortunately. Okay, so going back to the meals out piece, science is getting better here, whereas my app, we have this in development, an AI feature that'll scan your meal and punch out your numbers, but I'm not happy with where it's at. I'm really not happy with where MyFitnessPal is either. I have the premium version and I've tried this, and the accuracy is maybe 50% on a good day, right? And a lot of people are relying on this and they're realizing that it's not working. It's because they're way off base. So yes, eventually the meal scan feature will hopefully alleviate a lot of people's challenges with meals out, where you'll simply scan it and it'll give you a really accurate reading of everything on your plate. For now, I would actually look up the website, Nutrition Facts, because they're legally obligated to share that if it's a chain, and just punch in that or search it through the app. You'll find, for example, well, it would have to be a bigger chain, but like the Keg, all of its entrees should be in there. Option 2 is the perfect plate approach. I'll send you the guide at the end, where it's just hand size. It's not perfect science, but it can at least work in a pinch. Okay. So just to recap, we're going to actually workshop a meal plan in real time here in a second, but the biggest variable especially if fat loss is the focus, is to track your CAP. Because all of us, self-included, way overconsume when we don't actually physically do the math. And the good news is the apps do the math for you. You're just logging, okay? The big 5, plan around life with the Power of 2, the work back method. Try to follow that 80-20 rule, because I think that's going to help you with sustainability so you don't fall into the last supper mindset and the weekenditis that kicks in. And then make sure you keep it simple. Jason's talking calorie, cycling, right? I think that's what you're saying. Over one day. Yeah, if it balances out at the end of the week, that is one way to go about it. I just find it's a bit tricky. It opens the floodgates to conserving all your calories for the weekend, and then that restriction actually makes you more hungry, so that when you go into the weekend, it's very easy to overdo what you had intended. So slippery slope, I would say a couple hundred calories from a Monday, or a couple extra calories, a couple hundred calories on a Saturday. Okay. So a good takeaway, if it's not sustainable forever or for at least a long time, don't do it for a day. So most things don't really fit this category. At least most diets with a name don't. If you plan to never eat a carb again, great. Okay, you can probably manage keto. But if it's something you're trying to temporarily change, the results you get from temporary behavior changes, temporary habits, are temporary. Make sense? Okay. All right. Okay, so let me exit this, open up, just because MyFitnessPal has the web version that's fairly easy for you guys to see. So I'll just build this out, but shout out if you have any suggestions. So this will be based on a 2,350 calorie allotment. Some people might be jealous of that. Too bad. My appetite's really high at that still. And 205 of protein, 205 grams. So that's the cap, those two targets. So generally speaking, I have that shake, oftentimes without a banana actually, but I'll do it for the purposes of this. I use Canadian protein because it's by far the best value. They don't pay me to say that. I've just been buying from them forever. And so there you have it. Very simple, light breakfast, because I find I perform better mentally without really heavy all-American Denny's breakfast. I save my calories and my carbs for dinner and after working out. I wonder if I have, yes, I do. I think, yeah. So 204 meal prep. Like I said, I use them. So we're going to use, guess their steak meal. Because I get 5 meals a week, and that's my lunch. Generally, it's about 500-ish calories, 400-ish protein, which kind of fits into my total day's allotment here. So far, so good. We still have the majority of our calories left over for dinner. I actually might, I'll put a protein bar in mid-afternoon. I think we've got Barbell saved. These ones are decent. And rule of thumb for me on protein bars, it's a chocolate bar unless I can add a 0 to the protein total and the calories are within that. So 20 grams protein, 200 calories. Okay, we're good. Sometimes a protein bar is like 400 calories with 15 grams protein. You might as well just have a kick at that point, right? Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry if I'm flying along here, but any questions, feel free to unmute yourself too. I'm just trying to get this all built out and then we can talk about it. So dinner, completely winging it. I think recently I had basmati rice and yes, pizza pops I've had in the past. This is all the stuff you can have if your numbers are correct. So let's see. I think I had, there was more veggies. I don't often track my veggies. I put a bunch of spinach in my morning shake, but it's an extra step to track. I know I'm getting enough fiber if I'm having greens with 2 to 3 meals a day. Okay, so we're way under to this point, honestly, which generally speaking, this dinner is much heavier. So I think I just shortchanged myself on this. So we'll just go with that for now. It'll be a little under where it needs to be, but lastly, I just want to ensure I add a treat. So what I've been doing is it Jello? Yeah, this is the one, the ice cream sandwich. Okay, so there you have it. So there's a 1,600 calorie day with 135 protein. So not perfect, but I bet a lot of you on this are about where you need to be with those numbers, assuming fat loss is the focus. So with that said, hopefully that was fairly straightforward. We've got 3 square meals. We've got a protein bar, midday snack, wherever you get the biggest craving, and then the ice cream sandwich after. And frankly, you could probably afford some light popcorn or something here too and still make it work. Okay. Any questions on this? That's kind of the idea with the tracking is every day can look a little different, but still have your fallbacks. Like every day looks the same for me on breakfast and lunch, pretty much till the weekend. Okay, stop sharing. Christopher, where do you get your barbells? Online. I think I ordered those. I'm trying to think. It was some sale through Amazon. They're a little pricey, so. Is this format available on the free version, Ed? Yes, it is. You can go through the web through your login. You just don't get the full macro breakdown or the meal scan feature I talked about in free, but look for that. Okay, any questions on that? Otherwise, we got a little bit of a summary to share. Diane, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Earlier on, you mentioned healthy fats. Besides nuts, what are healthy fats?
Yeah, well, you'll get a cheat sheet at the end, but I oftentimes rely on a little bit of oil, like olive oil. when I cook, and I track that. I didn't mention that in my quick tutorial there. So that's something to keep in mind. Definitely track the added oils. That can add up fast if you're just free pouring in the pan. So use those in moderation. That's fine. I tend to think I get a lot of fats from my meats, and the amount you need for health, I'd say maybe 25% of your total calories. Like my target is 70 grams of fat a day. Keep in mind that fat has 9 calories per gram, right? So it can really overdo it. So yeah, avocado, oils, that sort of thing. Yeah, the oil sprays are helpful, like I shared previously, because you don't get nearly the amount of calories in a spray as you do from just pouring it in. That answer your question? I'll get you the document at the end here that gives you a full list. Okay. Yes, all good for egg yolks. There was, in the past, way back in the day, cholesterol of any kind was bad for you. Now they realize there's no real direct link between dietary cholesterol and blood levels of it. It's mostly the unhealthy behaviors that lead to higher cholesterol or genetic predisposition. So yeah, a couple eggs a day, no problem. Okay, so let me get back to this. So I just wanted to kind of summarize here. Now that we built out a meal plan, what to look at once you actually achieve some fat loss is thinking bigger picture into the 3 phases of this process, right? So these are the general terms people use. I use different terms because I find if you call it maintenance, people get bored easily and they don't stick to it. But at least in terms of an obvious visual for you is fat loss, you're in a calorie deficit, you're losing body fat. You're just trying to preserve every ounce of muscle you have in that phase. You might gain muscle if you're complete newbie to weight training or you're coming off a long layoff, but odds are you're not going to be gaining much muscle well in a calorie deficit. It's not possible. Okay. So keep that in mind. And now 2 is maintenance. So what is that? That's where you actually go up to maintenance calories. Meaning if you had to diet off the fat on 1400, now maybe your maintenance is 1800 to 2000. And you can hang out here for the foreseeable future and be okay. It's just we like to now increase your resting metabolism, building muscle, so you burn more calories at rest. That's the real X factor to making this a lot simpler to maintain in the long run. Because if the only way you feel you can maintain is by starving yourself, obviously that's a recipe for failure. So that's why we look at this in 3 phases. So I just want to touch on that briefly here, because most generally go wrong by either being, too aggressive with their fat loss and the weight's coming off quite consistently, but they don't realize that they're losing lean tissue like bone and muscle along the way in significant quantities, as much as half of the weight they're losing. Completely counterproductive. Their body fat percentage is not changing at all in that case. Or they, bulk by accident, where they fall off their plan completely for months at a time, and you're gaining mostly fat, very little muscle, and then it makes it very hard to diet it off. So you want to be kind of in a slow mode in both directions so that you minimize the muscle loss and you minimize the fat gain, depending on your goal. Okay. All right. Long-winded saying, play the long game. No more all or nothing. No more crash diets where you're super motivated for 6 weeks. I'm going to talk about a 6-week challenge that does the opposite for you here in a second. And no more extreme bulking where you stop exercising and you completely abandon any framework of nutrition. It's very easy to, especially if you're coming off a crash diet, to gain mostly fat in that scenario. Sorry, the chat keeps disappearing. Okay. Kathy. No, stick to the Calvert Fitness app, Kathy. I just don't have a web version of that to track. So you're doing it right. So for those who are members, I guess it would be helpful to share if there's members on here. There are lots. What's sort of been the key for you? What have your specific results been? Just share in the chat for now. I'm not going to call anyone out, but what's kind of made the biggest difference from just the framework we've setup for you, because that's real helpful intel for me. Yeah, Steve, tracking cap. Everything else falls into place nicely when you do that. Because we want you to have a plan that works. Because you guys have had lots of plans that don't work, or else you wouldn't be here, right? You've done the fads, you lost some initial weight, gained it back, and then some. And that's because of the aforementioned, too aggressive approach I talked about. Yeah, Kirsten, it seemed to be a lot of theme here is tracking is one thing, but having a bit of a big brother approach where someone is watching you track and making sure you're actually doing it, that's really where the whole system works. Yeah, I like that. Okay, good. I don't think that's Ed, but it says Ed. All right, so for those in the program, we're doing a Sleigh the Scale 6-week challenge. This is I always do something around this time of year because there's 60-ish days left, and a lot of people get into the mindset of, you know what, I'll kind of coast. I'll wait for January to really dial things in. But oftentimes what happens in that mindset is you undo a lot of progress. You gain back 5 pounds you lost. That adult weight creep that studies show mostly happens between now and the new year, and then a little bit over summer. So how do you avoid that? Well, you stay committed to something, right? Yeah, I'm a marketing wizard, Jose. That's the Sleigh. So what this involves is obviously workout plan, meal planning, accountability, and some prizes and recognition. I think that's the key, is the points-based system that keeps you invested in the process. So keep an eye out for this. If you're not a member, though, pretty straightforward. We work primarily with people over 40. I'm open to under that. We've got people well into their 70s and 80s who are crushing, which is awesome, which means it's never too late. And ready to try something sustainable for once. I think that's the big takeaway, is it's a 6-week challenge, but it's sustainable. And if you're looking for a crash approach, this is not the one for you, because I won't let you do that, because I know better. You'll be right back where you started. Oh, okay, Jackie, that makes sense. I knew the last name was recognizable. So generally speaking, what we see in these 6 to 8 week challenges, average of 7 to 12 pounds loss, certainly less in some cases, certainly sometimes more, based off starting weight. And then these numbers seem kind of generic, but they were based off the follow-up studies. So energy increase, obviously the confidence boost you get from this, well worth your time, right? And that's the idea. And proof of concept. So over 1,600 people to this point, a lot of them on this very call. And the first step is simply call with my team to walk through a game plan that makes sense sustainably for you. So I'll just put that in the chat if you're interested in booking that in. We're scheduling these through Tuesday for this challenge, and then that's it. Okay. So not a pressure sales call. It's a 30-minute pre-assessment. And we'll give you a program preview at the end if it makes sense. Okay. Cool. All right. So questions. Let's get those, because we're running a little over time, and then I'll put these links in the chat so you guys can download those as promised. First one is some protein breakfast ideas. I find people are woefully short on protein first thing in the day, and then they're chasing that number. 2 eggs doesn't count as a complete breakfast, nor does peanut butter on toast. So download that, and then the meal prep checklist is the next one to make that process a little less painful. Okay. Who's got questions? Love to open the floor. We got lots of engagement in the chat. I'm going to definitely summarize all that. Okay, pure protein bars at Costco. Sorry, I'm catching up in the chat. Those ones are fine too. I would say Bearbell is a little better quality source, but those aren't bad. Okay. All good? Captive audience. No one else wants to speak. Diane, I don't want to call on you. You've already done your part. So, anyone else? Don't be shy. Floor is yours. Something must have come in. Okay, here we go. We got questions. Okay. What are you looking for ingredient-wise with protein powder? Less is more. You know, if it's whey protein concentrate and a flavoring, and that's it, pretty confident every scoop is going to have a high percentage of protein. If it's got 17 different ingredients, then I shy away from it. I also want to see an amino acid profile. So a breakdown of what actually is like the leucine content, everything, in the actual protein. That's pretty good bet that it's a quality product. Or just go with Canadian Protein because I trust that they source the best. They work with bodybuilders who are really overanalyzing and meticulous about what they want. So they've kind of addressed that audience. Oh, Steve, when it comes to isolate versus concentrate, I wouldn't get too caught up in that. Because unless you have a dairy intolerance, concentrate is fine and it costs less. And mostly, at least their products are pretty much the same calories, concentrate versus isolate. You get lots of, so yeah, that I know there's a lot of marketing behind blends and isolates, but I generally go with the concentrate. If you get an upset stomach from it, that's a different story, but it's never been an issue for me. Okay. Yeah, on the same note there, Jeff, Canadian Protein. I can send you the doc, but if you're open to ordering online, you get way more bang for your buck. It's like 70 cents a scoop. Whereas if you go to a shop, hopefully my Popeyes rep isn't here, but you go to a place like that, you're paying, a buck or two more per scoop. It can add up quite a bit. Okay. And one other question I'm missing, Allison, Bearbell. Yes, Bearbell is available in most places now. You're just going to get a better deal online. Okay. All right. Cool. We can leave it there. Any questions you don't want to ask in public, you can ask in private. You got my email or my, for those in the app, obviously just click the chat box there and send it that way. Hopefully this was helpful to simplify a bit of this stuff and go from there. All right. Going once, twice. Awesome. Have a good rest of your week. Talk to you soon.